You can't have campus growth without retention. No rockstar DOA, admissions rep can save you from students being unhappy with the program, deciding to cancel, or worse, just flat out dropping. The role of a campus leader is to grow the campus, and one of the best ways to do that is through student engagement and retention. So today, I figured I contact my good friend Laura Marocco to shed some light on how she's been able to not only have solid admissions numbers, but also foster a great campus culture. Lauren is an accomplished higher education leader with nearly 20 years of experience in technical education. As executive director at Arizona Automotive Institute, she's currently overseeing 65 employees, 7 programs, over 500 students, and driving around $11 million projected revenue in 2024 with a 2.4 drop rate, which is pretty freaking amazing. Please welcome my guest, Lauren Marocco. What's up, Lauren?
Hello, it's so nice to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for doing this. So one of the things that I thought was super interesting, I think this is where we'll start, is you have a background, you came from financial aid. Now, there's a lot of campus directors like myself, and when we were coming up, we came from the admissions side, and maybe you see some directors of education come in. Financial aid has a whole other experience, a whole other kind of way of looking at things, which I'm assuming has led to you being almost like obsessive about this engagement part, because you've seen the downside when a student's not engaged. Talk to me a little bit about your financial aid kind of experience and how that kind of led to the success of you being a campus director.
Sure, great. Yeah, I got out of college and like many, just didn't know. I was just looking to sink my teeth into a career. And so I kind of through a temp agency got placed in a financial aid department at a technical trade school. And then just since then, just stayed in that space. I feel like it's such a great blend of mission-driven, student-changing lives, really impactful of what we do, along with business. I always kind of enjoy the business sense of it. And then the financial aid packaging, it's usually something that people don't necessarily, when they fall into it, they love it. But I really got to work closely with admissions always. So, we had a financial aid team that had both advisors that worked on the front end, really partnering what we call the super team pairing with admissions representatives to help those students that wanted to change their lives and start school and make sure they knew their funding options, along with all the things that happen once they start school with repackaging or changing programs, adding on electives, things like that. So I was able to do advisor work in both, supervisor work in both, and then was able to run the team as a director of about 15 different team members helping support the campus at that time. Really stayed closely with the director of admissions. So even though it was a different pathway maybe than you normally see, we were aligned on the same goal, right? Individuals needed to start, we had start budgets. We needed to make people that wanted to start be able to start and let funding not be an obstacle. So I was included, I had great leaders, great mentors that really allowed me in those conversations and strategy to talk about how are we going to get the start numbers? How are we going to get through that? So I had a lot of great exposure, a lot of great leaders. But to your point, I understand that if students start and then they don't graduate, then they took on debt and they didn't get the credential or the skill trade or the career training that they signed up for. And so nobody wins when an individual starts the training and doesn't complete it. And I think that, to your point, as I've moved over to campus president and kind of overall operations, has stayed with me, which is that we start students, we train them, and we place them. And so, it hurts my heart when we have drops, and I know zero necessarily isn't the goal, but anything controllable from a process, a leadership, or a strategy standpoint that we can do to help ensure that individuals that start with us graduate from us is the mentality that I have. And I think the student debt and understanding the investment financially, emotionally, that individuals take when they start school and want them to have a return on that probably has led to some of the decision making and culture that I try to do on a daily basis.
That kind of brings me to the next question, which is, what are you seeing from the campus president perspective? Like, what are the most critical factors that contribute, in your opinion, to high satisfaction in trade schools? Because I feel like high satisfaction usually leads to better, graduation rates, better placement rates. So I'm assuming that's one of the things that you track. But in that, like, what are you looking at to go, all right, we need to do a better job here? Or what are those factors that kind of stand out to you as a campus president?
If I were to break it down in one word, it would be value. So, it's important that the individuals feel value, but they also feel value from the training that we provide. So when I kind of look at the critical factors that weigh in for me on if our students are satisfied, would refer people to us, kind of a generally have strong opinion about the reputation and training they have, I look at two different things. What does the environment feel like on a daily basis? Are we creating an engaging and encouraging, career-focused learning environment that's intentional? Students that have a sense of belonging and a belief in themselves and confidence, and that those are the ones that feel like that community is there for their success. So one is, I would say, the value in making sure that instructors and staff value our students and that the students feel that. Second, ensuring the curriculum is relevant to the industry is critical. So students that come to trade schools, they're doing it with the expectation of gaining hands-on skills that's going to lead them to employment opportunities. So from my chair, collaborating with industry partners to update our equipment, teaching methods, and certifications ensures that our graduates are competitive. So we hold meetings with them regularly to review our training aids, and when I look into where are we investing, I always keep that top of mind. So for me, I try to do all decision making under the value adjective. That's kind of the critical element for me when I look at student satisfaction.
And I'm assuming too, so there's another kind of brilliant thing you do there where we go back to the student and you go, hey, this is valuable. And how I know is because the person that's probably going to hire you helped us build this. There's like something to that to go, even though maybe, because there are some things that you have to teach, right? I remember being at your campus and we were talking through some of the components of welding and HVAC that maybe is boring to the student, but like is so necessary to go over. And so I'm assuming that's kind of another selling point for your students of saying, hey, we didn't just build this for fun. Your potential employers built this with us.
Yeah, it's not only the training, it's the soft skills, right? That's why we track attendance. That's why we care about professionalism. That's why we have safety courses. It's what our industry partners are telling us they're looking for it on entry level employers, right? That's our goal. We're the liaison. You can YouTube, that's what trade school is best at. Matching graduates with real jobs that are ready now for somebody to take over. And so you're right on. I feel like we do a really nice job partnering with our employers. We've been around for a long time, so we have alumni now that took our program that are now hiring. So they're very strong in what we teach. Yeah, and so it's nice to see that full circle.
Yeah. So then when we talk about like behavior, so I'm obsessed with behavioral metrics, which I think because like 90% of what we talked about mostly was behavioral metrics. But is there something that you're tracking? I know attendance is one of those things, but talking about like, what are the triggers for you at the campus that makes your campus go into action? So for example, I mean, we talked about attendance, but like student doesn't show up. What's the play? What are you guys doing then when that happens? That's led to such a low drop rate at the campus.
Yeah. So I would say two things. One, we know first term drops, or that first term is really important, right? Because they're starting school, the confidence, they're looking around. Maybe they get their first quiz, their first homework. What did they grade on that? So there's a lot of firsts that happen in that first term. So when we're looking at that, we want to make sure that orientation, we break those down by program, and we have the instructor that's going to be teaching that class be the one that delivers orientation to take some of those nerves around kind of my expectations, my contact information. This is what I'm here for you. And then we do track attendance for the first 2 weeks. Admissions goes into the classrooms, and we have a sit report, which is like a Google spreadsheet that all the different departments can track that shows new students for the first 2 weeks of school. We know that's a very vulnerable time, and that's kind of all hands on deck. So those conversations are mostly led by admissions as they transition into school. After that, when academics kind of takes over, we have what's called an LDA tracking spreadsheet. So our program leads and our director of academics is in there daily discussing in kind of a huddle format.
LDA, that's last day attendance?
That's right.
Last day of attendance. Okay. Well, I remember. It's been a while since I've been in the game, but I remember. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So instructors are supposed to, on their first break, we have, they reach out to any student that's not there. We also have an attendance hotline, which is student ID badge. On the back of their student ID badge is a phone number. That's what we ask students if they're going to be late or they're going to miss a day, that they proactively call in, speak clearly, and let us know, what's going on with them. That automatically goes out in a voicemail type situation to a distribution list. the director of academics, the program leads, the student services coordinator are all on that. Instructors also are supposed to call the first break of the day that a student misses. So instructors are primary day one. After they hit 3 days out, to your point, the milestone of 3 days out, then we know something's starting to happen, right? Is an individual sick? Is something going on? That's when kind of the support services team on the academics front make outreach. So we'll call the student. If we can't get the student, we will reach out to any FERPA contact. So it's really important that when a student starts, we understand their support group and that we're capturing anyone we can talk about outside of the individual onto a FERPA form so that we can be free to kind of check in on students. So we're doing that from day 3 all the way up through as they're missing school. But to your point, the longer they're out of school, the less likely their decisions are already cementing, right? So we need to have those trigger points before then. So from an attendance, it's day 3 and out is kind of our standard checkpoint. The behaviors, right? They're coming in late. They're leaving early. That's sparking us to have conversations to say, is something going on with your employer? Can we work with your current job to see if maybe we can change the hours? Are you taking the bus and maybe that's making you have to do different times? Can we look into carpooling? So yes, not only just waiting till they're out of school, but even if they're needing to make adjustments to the shift in the form of coming in late or early, we're having those conversations because we know that that's when it's preventable, right? When they're starting to show that they can't make it bell to bell is when we need to be talking about what's going on. We have a success plan, which are like the 6 or 7 different obstacles: childcare, transportation, support network that we think are important to capture for a student before they show up for school. And that's what admissions is tracking for those first 2 weeks, those check-ins. How's it going? I know mom was supportive of school. How is she feeling? How's the childcare situation? So those are our marks. First 2 weeks, to answer your point, critically important. And then when we start to see lateness and leaving early, that's our next measure. And then when they're out of school for a block of about 3 days, then it's kind of all hands on deck.
So again, what I'm so impressed and why you're coming on the show now with your campus, I did feel like everyone's in it together. Like it's a campus goal. Like even, for example, we did a workshop for you guys for your instructors, but even your admissions personnel was there. And then like that really speaks volumes. So talk to me a little bit about that handoff between admissions and instructors, because depending on the campus you go to, and I've been to quite a few campuses where that relationship, there's a huge kind of chasm between the two of them, and that leads to almost like this weird handoff. So is there anything particular that you do that's maybe a little bit different on that handoff, information kind of sent or what have you?
Yes. Yeah, we do. And just before I go into tangibles, I absolutely agree with you. If you're working in silos, then you as a leader are not able to scale or grow. Where we were able to make a real shift is having a vision as a campus of where we're going to go for that year. So, we wanted a certain student population and we were all hands in. And I would send out emails, weekly, monthly of how we were attracting to that. I think there's a sense of a team goal and then how everybody contributes to it. When you think about the different levers that go into student population, when your new student starts are on point and you're able to get individuals that had to leave school coming back to take their program and your drops and retention are strong, that's when you can really see the campus population growth really kind of leverage nicely. So to that point, that all hands in, it's everybody's goal to have student pop be the number one metric that we as a campus are aligned to. When admissions comes into academics, the one thing we have them do is partner with the instructor to take the students around the campus in what we call a scavenger hunt. But the real goal of the scavenger hunt behind that is, do you know where the first aid kits are? Do you know if there was an emergency where the evacuation point is? Do you know that we're one team, that we're together? Instructors and admissions are talking closely. Who's your financial aid officer? Who's your career service placement? Who's your program lead? What are the contact information? Who do you call when X comes up? And so we take them around the campus. Even to the point of the women's rooms here are full. Where are other bathrooms throughout the campus? We kind of assume students start day one and all they know is their classroom or their instructor. So let's break that out from the beginning so that the student feels like the full campus is available and accessible to them. So that's one really nice addition that we have is the scavenger hunt. I'd also
Well, I
say
also love that too. Like, sorry to cut you off, but like what I love about that is we mentioned the word community. And like, so like in admissions, we talk about like the first priority is we have to make the student feel like we're a family. That's like step one.
yes.
Because if they could make them feel like they belong, it's a lot easier for them if something comes up or whatever for them to raise their hand and say, hey, I need some help. Without that, it's difficult. And although a scavenger hunt just feels like a fun game, it's actually cementing that thing of like, this campus is yours. Like, it's not just something out there in the ether. It's just something you go to. No, like this is a family. So absolutely, absolutely.
I feel like admissions is bringing their family, right, that new student or that new class, to the larger family. Like these are all the friends. We've invited you to a party. Let me walk you around and introduce you to now your extended family. And I do think that admissions leading that and then bringing academics in does show, to your point, what you're feeling, which is more of a unified campus, right? Like everybody's invited in. So I think that's important. They start, individuals come in and meet with their admissions rep. That's one-on-one. So how do we make that one-on-one now one on campus, right? And that's kind of what we need to build into and scale. And on the other side, every 5 weeks, we're in a kind of a 5-week enrollment block is kind of finals week. And so we get the campus together in a student assembly and we highlight certain awards, so perfect attendance awards, creating atmosphere where we can recognize the behavior that we want repeated, right? And THS inductees, we do a ceremony in the breezeway for the full campus. And then those that are leaving, their upcoming grads, this is their last finals week, we do some clapping, high five, kind of walk down the breezeway. Ceremony. So I think that's also important because no more than every 5 weeks as a campus, we're rooting with each other, right? I think that sense of pride in your fellow students is also really important. And so we set regular time to do that and have a student appreciation type event. So I think that kind of beginning scavenger hunt, the 5-week awards and recognition of our graduates is really key. And then to your point, trying to intermingle. I mean, we have 7 trades, but they overlap, right? There are a lot of times where automotive is learning something and maybe bringing some diesel classes in there will show them how their trade can look outside of that. So looking broader than programmatically to say where is some overlap. We're bringing in a guest speaker, but could this be for multiple different trades? I think the more we can stage change for students or broaden employment opportunities, have you thought about HVAC and maybe traveling the world in the form of a cruise ship? Just the more we can broaden thinking beyond a very narrow, siloed approach is key.
Yeah, and we'll get into strategies or like initiatives at the campus and what you've done to kind of improve the retention rates. But before we get there, one of the things I think is fascinating again about your campus, and I've learned a lot like being at your campus, and one of that is just how important it is to have a really good like director of education. And your director of education, I don't know if you call her that. What's her role?
Yep.
Renee?
I'm so glad you're saying this. Yep, because of all the initiatives, that's the one. We have a dual role. She's director of academics and career services. One leader, 2 important parts of the campus.
So walk me through, because this is something that gets left out. So when I became a campus director, it was funny when you were talking about your role getting into education. It was similar to mine. Funny enough, so I'm looking I used to be a professional fighter, right? And so I used to get hit in the head for a living. And I go, I should probably get a real job because like getting hit in the head for a living is kind of terrible. And there's this admission role open. And I was like, I don't know what admissions is. I know what college is. I went there and I'm like, oh, I could probably do that. And so I go there and there's a group interview. And I know you just met me recently, but I am a highly competitive person. So there's 40 people in the room. Okay, this is 2013-ish. So like education was still like really, really hot. And so there's like 40 people in the room. They've all been in the career 20 years, 30, and here I am. I legitimately do not know what the job does. But I'm like, I'm gonna win. So that's how I got into it. And then I, became a campus director, and pretty much my campus at the time just hands me this book and was like, here's the binder, grow the campus. And I go, all right, I'll figure it out. What nobody told me was what to look for. Because really, I see campus presidents as the CEO of the business. Like, you have a location, it's your business, you own it.
Yes.
You have to grow it, have great value, all of the above. But nobody tells you, or at least nobody told me anyway, how do you find the who? Because once you have the right who, the how doesn't matter as much, right? Like, you just find the right person and magic kind of happens. So how did you find the right who? Like, what were you looking for that had you go, okay, correct me if I'm wrong. Her name is Renee, right?
Correct.
So
Yes.
Renee, like, again, every time I met her, I was like, this is why this campus is crushing it right now. So how did you know that she was the one?
Yes. That's such a great question. So Renee has been with us. Go ahead.
No, my camera's weird. So when I talk with my hands a lot, and I have this fancy camera where I do that, it'll follow me. And so I talk with my hands so much that it always thinks I want it to follow me. So anyway, yeah, if I do that, it's just because I'm trying to get to stop.
No. So I've had, to your point, I mean, sometimes it's making sure that we create the environment and the positions for our team members that are high potentials, even if they don't currently exist. I've had great mentors, but a lot of times my promotional move was a little bit of a leap of faith. And to what you're saying, I think if you have the right core skills, then the rest of the skills you will naturally build on, and that you can perform well in any job if you have the core, kind of things that make high potentials. And Renee absolutely had that. She had tenure, so she really understood the campus culture, the vision, and she had seen the campus through a lot of different cycles. So having someone that has seen the campus both in its different leaders and their strengths and was able to stabilize. So she was career services director at the time. So she, spent most of her early career in career services and then as director of career services. That had always been a very strong point for the campus. But in that time when she was there, she had other executive directors and DOAs that had come and gone, and there hadn't been a lot of stability in that role. And so the first thing she did was she was willing to go where the campus needed her. So to your point of that lack of siloed vision of this is my role and the rest of the campus, they can figure it out, right? She didn't have that. She was I will, put my effort wherever it needs to be to make sure that the campus is successful. So true student spirit is one. And then from an academic standpoint, when your instructor morale isn't on point, I mean, it is very hard to build on anything if you don't have a strong leader of academics. So when I came over to the campus is actually when she was given the dual role. So we kind of took on the mission together. I'm executive director and you have the instructor and the career services point, all of that work under you, and then her and I worked closely together. So she puts the hours in, right? There's just a strong work ethic, number one. I mean, she really cares about being successful. But in order to be in that kind of role, you have to be able to delegate too, right? Because if everything we wouldn't be able to scale and grow. So the leadership ability is really important. To me, all of that comes down to intentional messaging and being able to make your leadership style what that campus and morale needs to get your vision across. So strong vision of where we needed to go and ability to communicate and articulate that vision was important to me as well. So strong leadership style, able to delegate, able to get teams to band together to see how they fit into the larger vision was really important. Strong, her relationship with employers were already solid, so that brought in a lot of skill already that she already had. Partnerships with Glendale, the Chamber of Commerce, the legislators, our employers. So they already knew her, and so she already had that credibility and trust already built with people outside the walls. But the biggest skill set, honestly, to your point, is being able to recruit and attract the right people in the roles for the team. So even if you have a strong leader, that leader's ability to recruit, hire, train, and onboard an individual is, if you don't have that, then you're always going to be spinning. So we've added a lot of instructors under her, and we've been able to retain them. So, and I attribute a lot of that to Renee's ability to lead a team, and to help them get energized by our wins and aligned in our challenges so that we, continue to have strong morale. So I would say, to answer your question, her ability to lead and her commitment to and representation of the campus and the brand is why she is so invaluable and a big part of our success.
And then also brings me to like, as a campus director, we have to learn how to delegate as well. And again, that's something that I don't think I did a great job at when long time ago when I was a campus director was this, you know what, I'm gonna own all of it. Because there wasn't trust there. And really it was a cop out for me, right? Like the harder path was let's go find the right person to do the job. But I built this like connection with them where I was like, I'll just kind of protect them from corporate and then I'll do the work. And then next thing you know, I'm working 70, hours a week and I'm stressed and all of this. And so talk to me about like your kind of journey of learning how do I delegate? How do I make sure that and then I guess in tandem too, that my employees feel valued? Because a huge portion that we don't talk about enough is the retention of solid employees. Because again, I've friends in this space still. We do some work in that kind of industry, and I've seen campuses have terrible drop rates, not because the program is bad, but because they have a revolving door of instructors. And so when that happens, the students start to go, wait a minute, like if they're leaving, then maybe I should leave too. So talk to me a little bit about your journey of delegation plus, what are you doing to retain your really good employees?
That's so funny how our conversation, you're right on. We're hitting all the absolute watch outs because it's still in progress. I tend to be a little bit of what you're saying, right? I think in order to have a successful campus, you have to, by some nature, as the leader, the buck stops with me and take a lot of responsibility. And like you had already mentioned, I really run the campus like I would my own business and have that entrepreneurial spirit. And I do feel that way. But that can, if you don't watch out, make it very tight and where you are almost burned out. And then if you leave, then the campus is worse off than if you found a way to balance, because this stable and strong leader is the only way that you can have strong, lasting success. So one is really working with Renee. To your point, the more you gain trust in your leaders, I think the more that comes out. And so I create a cadence where her and I meet enough that I get the information that I need to give me the confidence I need to give her the freedom that she needs. So, but doing that one-on-one so that she can then be the voice. So I know, for me, what helps me is that I know that she and I are aligned and she hears from me exactly the messaging and where I want us to go, but she's the one that can then make it her own and tailor it. But I know she's heard from me in the direction. So when her and I are aligned, then allowing her to be the one in the meetings. I go to some, I don't go to some. I want the team to not know when I'm going to be there, and then I'm a contributor. I sit in the back of the room and I encourage, and if I'm not there, she runs the show, right? But I look at her agenda ahead of time. I know that we're together on it. So really utilizing your name to be encouraging and your leaders to role model. So the one thing is making sure that if it's what message am I sending when I'm in it, right? And so if I know Renee's doing a meeting, but I'm there and I deliver a topic, the team's going to know that topic's really important to me. But if I do that in everyone, then they're not going to know, right? It's going to seem that. So to me, everything's about intentional messaging and letting the leader of that team be the one to deliver most of the operational business, and then I come in with those truly important areas so they can kind of separate out what's coming from corporate or top of my mind to the day-to-day needs that comes from their leader, and then the more cohesive we are together. So to me, it's the one-on-ones with the leaders that we talk weekly. So we have a Monday morning afternoon meeting. We talk about all the events that week. We align. We take that hour and a half, we really align, and then they run the show the rest of the week, but we're always kind of meeting midweek and then end of week. We have a scorecard as well, which is for their department, what are kind of the highlights of what drives financials or drives metrics. And there's kind of a win-loss to your competitive nature. You have to have a little competition in leader roles or to be successful. So we kind of have benchmarks and run rates. And so we're talking about, okay, as a team, did we meet it or did we not? And what's the adjustments for next week? So the more that we have tracking, so if I know things are going well, then I can back off and just be like, you guys got it. So proud of you. Let me get lunch for you on Friday. Way to go, and leave it be. Let them have the win. If we're not tracking, then it might be hey, let's meet, kind of do how can I help? What's the adjustment that we need to make here? What are the changes from what we talked about on Monday? And more of a supportive role. So one-on-ones and like a scorecard-ish where you can keep your leaders on track. I think everyone wants to do well. I think the one area of watch out is that you can become so distracted with so many different things that if you're not super clear to the team what's important to you, then everything's important, and then it gets really tough to do anything really well.
Yeah, which I think is like the purpose of like the book Traction. You have like a top three, right? Like this is this quarter or this, year even. Like these are the three things. I'm not going to change them. However, how you get there is irrelevant. Like when I lead teams today, it's like, hey, this is where we're headed. How we get there is up to you. And this is like, I don't know, maybe I'm not the best leader in the world, but for my business anyway, it's very much like if things start getting messed up, if you don't want me involved, just win.
Yeah.
It's just the moment that things start getting sketchy that I'm going to jump in. And if you don't want me involved, then just let me know everything is doing well, do your job, and then we're good. Like I will, because I don't want to be involved in every little thing, especially, today. We were talking about career services earlier.
Yes.
And I want to hear your kind of perspective of like, where does that job placement and support help in retaining students? And then also, like, how are you alluded to it earlier, but how are we leveraging employers to help us retain students? Because for them, I see a win-win here, right? Like if we don't graduate them, they're not going to have rock star employees. And, worse yet, if they don't last, then obviously we don't, we're not successful. So talk to me about your strategies there and how you're leveraging those employers.
Absolutely. I mean, career service is critical. We know that individuals that start with us, that's one of their main whys of why they're starting with us is they want a career at the end of this. So we have career services actively participate during orientation, where the team's going to come into the classroom and speak to students about what they can expect from the program and the career support available to them. So this introduction sets the tone and really helps students see the connection between why they're starting their training and what their career could look like, painting that picture, making it tangible and visible to that student. To maintain the momentum, we do schedule career services to go into classroom visits at key milestones throughout the student's program. So they're in there early in their first term, they're in there about midway through, and then again about 10 weeks prior to graduation. And these visits ensure that the students remain focused on their career goals. Hey, we're getting closer. Let me look at your resume. Let's do some mock interviewing. So one area is we like when our employers will come in during those mock interview classroom days as the hiring manager, truly. Like this is a hiring manager currently in the space. Let's have him role play with you guys in the classroom, in this setting. If we can't do an employer, we'll do the instructor. But we do try to bring real employers in to mock interview, to review resumes as much as we can with our career coaches. To your point, having that dual leader. I mean, if you have a silo between career services and academics, then I think the student suffers a bit. Having a dual role or at least a real alignment in vision is really impactful. So we really feel strongly about our single director overseeing both of those important pieces. We also prioritize strong employer relationships by job fairs. So quarterly, we have a job fair in our breezeway, usually has great 30 to 50 employers that come in, because a little bit of employers knowing that our graduates are competitive and there's a lot of jobs out there, and seeing that in the form of a job fair is not only great for our graduates, but it's good for our employers to know that they need to step up when it comes to starting wage and other things. That there's a lot of marketable skills that are coming from our graduates. So we do quarterly job fairs that I think have added a lot of energy, a lot of buzz on those days when we have them. And then it's good because then we tell our students, hey, job fair next week. If you haven't done your resume, get into career services now. Put those perfect attendance awards on your resume. Get yourself marketable. So it forces them to do it throughout their program instead of waiting just until the end. So, they speak at graduations, they speak at orientations, they come in. I love it when we can get employers to come in and hand out the perfect attendance, because we tell our students all the time, the number one piece of advice I could tell you is treat this like you're going to be on the job, show up early, be ready to go. I mean, that's how an employer is going to feel you're going to be as an employee with them. But when we can have an employer come in and actually hand out to students, good job, here's your perfect attendance, that really hits that point home, how important attendance is.
And I love it too, because then, like, so when a student goes through admissions, they're like, I want a job in this career, but it's broad, right? Like, they don't know what that will feel like, look like. But then when you meet an employer, now they have an actual goal to go to. For example, for massage, I used to work for a massage therapy school, and Massage Envy was the big one. And it was like, I'm going to work, like, they'd be in their first month of school. I'm going to work for Massage Envy. And so it was like, then they were going in a direction. It wasn't broad anymore. It wasn't just like, yeah, I'm just going to work in this field, or I'm going to do whatever. Or vice versa. Maybe you have a student that interviews a bunch of people and they go, you know what? I'm going to start my own HVAC company. Because it's like, I see what they're doing, and then the entrepreneurial side comes out and they're like, okay, no, I'm going to be their competitor, and I'm going to go and I'm going to learn and kind of figure that out.
Yeah, I would say majority of our students, they know directionally where they want to have a career, but they're not set on an employer at that point. And so the more we can get them to see different career paths, I think they're very moldable during the time that they're with us, and that it's kind of our duty to take them either on field trips to say, hey, this is what a service manager looks like day to day. This is what a shop looks like. This is, we did a field trip to a children's hospital down here in Phoenix just to see the HVAC equipment that it takes to run a hospital is eye-opening. And so, to your point, sometimes light bulbs go off when they really see career paths that are open to them they didn't even think about when they started with us.
Yeah, like, I went to school to be a teacher. I wish they would have done the student teaching way earlier, because then I would have known real fast that being a teacher is not for me. Like, I wish that they waited until the fourth year to do that student teaching, and they should have did it year one, because I would have been change my major anyway. So I want to end with this. So one of the things that I think part of the reason why I started the Trade School Growth Guide channel was because, again, when I was a campus director, heck, even an admissions rep, there was no direction. Again, my company had a little bit of training, but for the most part, it wasn't that much. It took me to reach out to and we have a mutual friend, Shane Yates, and people, other campus directors that are winning, other regionals that were winning at the time, and I'd call them and be like, all right, like, you're my mentor now. Congratulations. Let's go through this. It took me to kind of do that, but there wasn't anything cemented in that. And in fact, I jokingly, not jokingly, it's dead serious, I emailed you and said, hey, this channel actually came because of you. I don't know if you know that. So I had this newsletter for entrepreneurs, and you signed up for that newsletter. And then the first email I asked people, like, hey, what information do you need to know? And what I thought was interesting was you responded with the stuff that you like to watch, and they're outside thought leaders, right? Like, there's leadership concepts, there's marketing concepts, but there wasn't a place specifically for higher ed. Most people in higher ed go outside of the industry to find that. So I said, okay, let's bring it together. With that being said, I want to help people maybe that are new campus directors that are like, how do I become Lauren? So what pieces of advice would you have for a new campus director, someone, or better yet, someone who wants to become a campus director? What advice would you give to them?
Well, I think things like this are paramount, and I'm so appreciative that this came from a fruit of that, because
I'm probably going to owe you money at some point. Yeah, like we'll talk about it offline. I think I owe you something.
No. If we can help one person, I mean, listen, I get a lot of things. One of these, and this isn't my piece of advice yet, let me hold that just for a second, but I do a lot of podcasting, investing in myself, because I feel a lot of responsibility that until when my skill hits a lid, then the campus can only grow so far, right? And so, I think always professionally and personally developing is really important, and it's things like this that at least speak to me, and I think will speak to your audience. So And I think it's important because I think sometimes as campus presidents, there's only one, and we may take on the role, and it may be a jump up, and we know we're ready for it, but that we haven't had a lot of the reps, and yet there's some big decision making that comes on our desks, and we can feel a little bit alone. And I think the biggest thing I would say is there are a lot of things that are shared challenges, or that every school or business kind of struggles with, and so use resources, podcasts, fellow people in your networks. LinkedIn, like there are real people that have been where you are. I mean, my first year to compare to where I was year 4, some of it you learn and some of it you learn from other people. And so I think, things like this are really important. And I think it's really great that you're putting advice out for executives that maybe are new to the space that just need to hear, some ideas to kind of get them going. So I think that's important. I mean, my biggest piece of advice would be one, looking at the levers that are most important to population. So look at your starts, look at your drops and retention, look at those levers and really say what's contributing to each and try to solidify that first. And you're going to be able to do that on the brunt of your shoulders for a while, but you got to get a team in place to help support. So human capital and kind of a structure and org chart, and really making sure you kind of understand what your talent pool needs to look at to deliver on what's expected of you is really important. So there's relationships, both with your students and with the team and each other, are really going to be important. So one has got to be hiring and the right kind of organizational chart for you to be successful. But when you just have a lot you're swimming in, just take a breath and say, what's the most impactful things that lead to population? Am I getting them from the front end, or am I losing them in the middle? Like, where am I most bleeding kind of population? And try to put your resources there, because once you can feel stable in some of those key metrics, then you can kind of improve on there. And I think reach out, right? There are some of us in the space that have gone through and seen struggles and can offer value. So one, learn. You got to take every experience and learn from it. If it didn't go well, still learn. Like, take everything and absorb it like a sponge. And say, reflect on the day and say, what went well and why do I think it went well, so I can do more of it. And if something didn't go well, what am I going to learn from, so that the next time, I'll do it just a little bit better. Can continue to invest in yourself. Ask for resources. There is a community, the school community. We've been there, right? And physicians similarly have different challenges. So let's share together. I know, Raylan, myself, look us up on LinkedIn, ask us a question. We'll be willing to help those, because students suffer, when campuses don't do well. And so I would say, look at your org chart, get the right people, focus on recruiting and hiring, onboarding and training, retain. You have to have stability in your team. And then second, from a performance metric, pick those couple, 2 or 3 that lead to everything else, and put all your energy there at first. It's going to feel like a lot coming at you at once. You just take one, the most impactful thing at a time, and then you just keep taking bites out of it.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so interesting because it's like higher education is really small. Like, it's big. I mean, there's 7,500 schools out there, but somehow, and maybe it's just Shane, he's connected to everybody, but like, there's usually 1 degree of separation from somebody at any point. And we move around a lot. So I think there's also kind of that. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the channel. This was tons of fun. You did amazing, by the way, as always. And with that being said,
no, I would just say, everybody's learning. I'm learning, so I appreciate having this conversation, but I remember what it was like day one, right? And so if you're feeling, the confidence comes with reps. So the biggest advice I'd have is just keep doing it, right? Take a deep breath and keep doing it. And with reps come confidence. I enjoyed this conversation. Let's do it again.
Yeah, this will be fun. All right. So if you're still watching, do me a favor. There's a link to a video up here. If you need help with anything right here, go check out this training. I think you'll appreciate it. As always, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And I'll catch y'all in the next one.